It's funny how one seemingly innocent holiday tradition can turn into something you can never forget, something that haunts you for years. This happened to me one Christmas, a memory that still sends a shiver down my spine every time I think about it. I never told anyone about that night, not even my family. I guess it seemed too far-fetched, too unsettling to be real. But now, as I sit here recounting everything, I know I'm not crazy. What happened that night in the cold, silent hours of Christmas Eve was real, and it was terrifying. It started like any other Christmas Eve. I was just a teenager, about 16 years old, and I was sitting in front of the fireplace, lazily flipping through an old magazine. The tree was up, the decorations were perfect, and everything in the house was warm and cozy. My parents were upstairs getting ready for bed. My little brother Timmy was already asleep upstairs, undoubtedly waiting for Santa's arrival. I didn't really believe in Santa anymore, but I wasn't about to spoil the fun for Timmy. The whole night had that comforting, festive glow until the moment it all went wrong. I wasn't the kind of person who was easily spooked. I never believed in ghosts or anything like that. But there was something about that night that felt different. The air felt heavier, almost thick with a strange tension. As the clock struck midnight, I could feel something unsettling lurking just beneath the surface. I remember hearing something strange outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind or the snowflakes tapping against the window, but the sound was too deliberate, too rhythmic. It wasn't the usual sounds of a winter storm. It was the sound of footsteps, heavy, slow, and dragging. My heart skipped a beat. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But then, the unmistakable sound of a loud thud echoed the walls, followed by the soft creak of the back door opening. I stood up quickly, my heart pounding in my chest. There was no way my parents were downstairs. They were both sound asleep upstairs. My first instinct was to grab a bat, anything to defend myself. But as I moved toward the hallway, I stopped dead in my tracks. I could hear muffled voices, low and strained, coming from the direction of the living room. Someone was definitely downstairs. I was certain of it now. I crept quietly toward the source of the noise, each step calculated and slow. My mind raced with possibilities, robbers, intruders, but the longer I listened, the stranger it became. I could hear the sound of jingling bells, the kind that were used in Christmas decorations. But these jingles were different. They were almost menacing. I froze in the doorway of the living room. What I saw was something I would never forget. At first, it was too dark to make out the details, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw him. A man dressed in a tattered Santa suit. But not the kind of Santa that you see in stores or on Christmas cards. This Santa was wrong. His face was hidden by a thick, grizzled white beard, and his eyes were dark, almost sunken in. He was hunched over, sitting by the fireplace, staring at the fire. But what chilled me to the core was the expression on his face. It was blank, like he was lost in thought, or worse, lost to something far darker. His movements were slow, unnatural, like a marionette controlled by invisible strings. What made it worse was the sound of him mumbling. He was whispering to himself in a language I couldn't understand. The words sounded like they came from deep within his throat, heavy and guttural. And then, I realized something: he wasn't alone. I took a step back, making sure I didn't make a sound. There was something else in the room with him, something small, almost hidden in the shadows. My heart pounded as I squinted to make it out. It was a child, a little girl, no older than Timmy. Her clothes were dirty, torn, and her face was pale, too pale. And she was staring at the Santa, her eyes wide and empty. Her lips didn't move, but her gaze seemed to lock onto mine, sending an icy wave of dread through my entire body. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like they were made of stone. The Santa man suddenly stood up, his chair scraping the floor. I watched, breathless, as he shuffled toward the little girl, his steps slow and deliberate. He leaned down, almost in a trance, and whispered something in her ear. The child didn't flinch, didn't react. She just stood there, staring at the ground. I had to get out of there. I turned around, trying to make my way back toward the hallway, but that's when I heard the sound of a door opening behind me. I spun around, and there in the doorway stood my mother. She was wide-eyed, looking directly at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Before I could ask what was wrong, the sound of jingling bells rang out again, sharp and piercing, cutting through the stillness. The man in the Santa suit turned to face me. For the first time, his eyes locked onto mine. I will never forget the look he gave me. It wasn't just cold, it was full of malice, of something darker, older than I could comprehend. And then, without a word, he stepped backward, vanishing into the shadows of a hallway. My mother blinked, and the moment was over. She looked at me like nothing had happened, as if she didn't see the man or the child. She just told me to go back to bed and wished me a good night. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sign of movement. But all I could hear was the wind outside and the soft ticking of the clock. When morning finally came, everything seemed normal. The house was quiet. The tree was still standing, the light still twinkling. But something had changed. I couldn't shake the image of that man in the Santa suit, the coldness in his eyes, or the child standing there, motionless. My mother never spoke of it. We never talked about it. And after that night, I could never look at Christmas the same way again. The joy of the holiday was gone, replaced with a lingering sense of unease. And every year, when the clock strikes midnight on Christmas Eve, I can't help but wonder if he's still out there waiting for his next visit. If you've ever had an experience like this, or if you have any thoughts on what happened that night, leave a comment below. Well, don't forget to like this video if you found this story chilling, and share it with anyone who loves a good horror tale. And of course, if you want to hear more spine-tingling stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. Thanks for watching, and stay safe this holiday season. You never know who or what might be visiting you on Christmas Eve. It was a quiet winter evening, the kind where the cold air nips at your face, and the world feels like it's holding its breath. I had been invited to a Christmas party by a coworker, and while I didn't know many people there, I was hoping it would be a good way to kick off the holiday season. The house was located in a small, older neighborhood on the outskirts of town, a charming place, with the old-fashioned kind of charm that only seems to exist in movies or memories. The type of place where you can almost imagine people gathering around a fireplace, exchanging stories, and drinking warm cocoa. I had arrived a little early, the first one to make it. The host, a man named Dave, greeted me with a wide smile and a firm handshake. He seemed nice enough, though there was something about his energy that felt slightly off. I brushed it off, maybe he was just nervous about hosting. The house itself had that eerie feeling that some old homes have, where the creaky floorboards and drafty windows give it an unsettling vibe, but nothing that made you feel in danger. Still, the atmosphere was odd. As I walked inside, the smell of pine mixed with something else, something faintly sour, like it had been there for too long, but it quickly vanished the moment the door shut behind me. As the party started, more people trickled in. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the faint buzz of conversation filled the house. The Christmas tree stood proudly in the corner, its lights flickering in time with the soft classical music playing in the background. It was everything you'd expect from a festive gathering except for one thing. There was a room off to the side, a door tucked away in the back of the house that no one seemed to be using. It was slightly ajar, but every time I tried to get a glimpse of it, someone would walk by or the door would creak shut. I don't know why, but I found myself drawn to it. Every now and then, I'd see Dave glance nervously in that direction as well. Around an hour into the evening, I was chatting with some new acquaintances near the kitchen when I heard a soft, barely audible sound. It was a voice, one that was too low to make out. At first I thought it was just the music, but then I realized the sound was coming from the room behind the door, the one no one seemed to go into. Curiosity got the best of me, and I quietly made my way over, weaving through the crowd until I stood in front of the door. I hesitated for a moment, but then something strange happened. The door opened by itself. I swear to God I didn't touch it. I looked around to see if anyone else had noticed, but no one seemed to be paying attention. It was as if the house itself was trying to keep its secrets hidden. My heart raced, but I pushed the door open a little wider, just enough to peek inside. The room was dimly lit, almost unnaturally so. The only light came from a single lamp in the corner, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. I could see a small table in the center of the room with something on it. But what really caught my attention was the old, moth-eaten armchair beside the table. Sitting in it was a figure, a man, hunched over with his back to me. The weird part, he was wearing an old Santa suit. It looked old, almost like it hadn't been touched in years. The fabric was stained and torn in places, and his hands, his pale, skeletal hands, were resting on the arms of the chair. I stood there frozen, staring at the man. The air in the room seemed to thicken, the temperature dropping rapidly. despite the warmth from the rest of the house. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt tight, constricted. Then I heard it again, the voice. But this time it was clear. It wasn't a whisper, but a deep, gravelly tone, like it was coming from the man in the chair. "You shouldn't be here." I don't know how long I stood there staring at that man. I couldn't tear my eyes away. My mind screamed at me to leave, but my body wouldn't listen. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man's head slowly turned. And when I saw his face, his sunken eyes and hollow cheeks, I wanted to vomit. His skin was ashen, the skin of someone long deceased, but somehow he was sitting there, in that chair, staring straight through me. I don't remember how I got out of that room. All I remember is the sound of my heart pounding in my chest as I rushed back to the main room of the house. The lights suddenly felt too bright, the laughter too loud, and the warmth too suffocating. I never told anyone what happened. They'd all just assume I'd had too much to drink or made it up for attention. But I know what I saw. As the night wore on, I kept looking over at that door which had somehow closed itself again. The party went on, but I could never fully shake that feeling, the feeling that something or someone was still watching me, and that I was being kept there for some reason, though I didn't understand why. The next day, I left early, never returning to that house or to Dave's party. I heard later that the house had been built on land where an old family used to live, one that had disappeared without a trace many years ago. No one knows exactly what happened to them, but some say it was something unnatural. I still don't know what I experienced that night, but there's one thing I know for sure: something in that house wasn't right. And to this day, I can't shake the feeling that the man in the chair was waiting for me. If you've ever been to a party that felt like it was hiding something, or if you've experienced something strange and unexplainable, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and share this video with anyone who loves a good horror story. And if you want to hear more chilling tales like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It was Christmas Eve, 2017. The city was blanketed in snow, its quiet streets gleaming under the soft glow of streetlights. I had spent the day running errands and doing last-minute shopping, but now it was almost 11 p.m. and I found myself curled up on the couch in my tiny apartment. The tree in the corner of the room flickered with soft, colorful lights, and the hum of the TV was the only sound breaking the otherwise perfect silence. It was my first Christmas alone. My parents had gone away to visit relatives, and my friends were scattered across the country, each with a Sia. I wasn't particularly upset about it. I'd always preferred solitude during the holidays. There was something peaceful about it, the calm that came with a quiet evening in. The kind of night where I could just relax and let the world outside carry on without me. I was wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot chocolate, when the phone rang. The number on the screen wasn't one I recognized. It wasn't local, and I didn't recognize the area code. I usually don't answer calls from numbers I don't know, but something made me press the green button. Maybe it was the loneliness of the night or just sheer curiosity. "Hello?" I answered, trying to sound casual, but I immediately regretted it. The voice on the other end wasn't familiar, and it was the kind of voice that sends a chill down your spine. Low, almost whispering, like they were trying to hide their identity. "Are you alone?" the voice asked, its tone cool and unsettling. I froze for a moment. The question wasn't asked out of concern or curiosity. It felt more like an accusation. Something about the way it was spoken sent a shiver up my spine. "Yeah," I said, trying to shake off the unease creeping into my chest. "Who is this?" There was a long pause. A few seconds that felt like hours. I could hear the faint sound of someone breathing on the other end, but no answer came. Then, just as I was about to hang up, the voice returned. "Why are you alone?" It was sharper now, almost too interested in my situation. My fingers gripped the phone tighter. I don't know why, but I couldn't hang up. I wanted to. I should have. But I didn't. It felt like I was somehow trapped in that moment. I glanced around the room, trying to keep my calm. "I'm alone because I just am. What's this about?" I said, my voice betraying a hint of nervousness now. The voice chuckled. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was cold and distant, and it made my blood run cold. It almost felt like it wasn't meant for me, but rather to remind me of something I hadn't thought about. "Look outside." My breath caught in my throat. Look outside. It was late, and everything beyond the window was pitch black, except for the faint outline of snow falling gently against the glass. I hesitated, almost not wanting to. But something about the voice, the calmness with which it demanded I do it, made me feel like I had no choice. I moved toward the window, the floor creaking under my feet. I slowly pulled the curtain aside, barely enough to peek through. At first I saw nothing, just the usual quiet street outside, faintly lit by streetlights. The world looked peaceful, undisturbed. It was the perfect Christmas night, silent except for the occasional whoosh of a car driving past in the distance. Then my eyes caught something, or rather, someone. There was a figure standing across the street, just out of the light's reach. They were tall, wearing a long, dark coat, and their face was hidden beneath the shadow of a hood. I couldn't make out any features, but something about them felt wrong. Their stillness, the way they were positioned just outside the lamplight, perfectly hidden from view. It didn't make sense. I instinctively backed away from the window, my pulse quickening. But before I could move, the voice came again, this time a little clearer, a little more insistent. "Do you see him?" The voice was like a whisper, but it felt too close, as if the person was standing right behind me. I couldn't speak. My mouth had gone dry. I turned my head back toward the window but didn't dare to look outside again. My heart pounded in my chest. Then, the voice spoke again, sending a chill through me. "He's watching you." The phone line went dead. I stood there, frozen, staring at the dark figure outside. My hands shook as I slowly backed away from the window, my eyes never leaving the spot where I had seen the man. Was I imagining it? Had I just been spooked by the loneliness of the night? I turned to the door, and that's when I heard it. A loud thud. It came from the front door. My heart dropped into my stomach. It wasn't the sound of a knock. It was something heavier, like someone had just slammed their body into the door. The door rattled with the impact, and I jumped back, my breath shallow. Another thud. Then a third. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It felt like everything inside me had just frozen. I ran to the door, my mind racing. Who was it? What did they want? I grabbed the nearest chair and wedged it against the door, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Another thud. And then silence. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. No one. I slowly, cautiously opened the door. There was no one on the other side. The hallway was dark, as empty as it had been when I first moved in. The silence was deafening. I locked the door again and checked every window, every lock in the apartment. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I turned off the TV, unplugged the landline, and powered down my phone, anything to stop the ringing. Anything to shut out the terrifying unknown. But that night, the feeling of being watched never left. I didn't sleep at all. Not a single second. I spent the entire night staring at the walls, listening for any sounds that might mean someone was outside. The phone never rang again, but the feeling of that voice, the voice that had spoken to me on Christmas Eve, lingered. To this day, I don't know who made that call. I don't know who was standing outside my window or who slammed into my door. Every year, when Christmas rolls around, I can't help but remember that night. And every time I hear a phone ring late at night, I wonder if I'll ever get another call like that. I've never spent another Christmas alone. It was the kind of cold December evening where the air feels sharp, almost biting, and the only warmth you could find was from the glow of your own breath. I had been looking forward to this Christmas more than any in recent years. After a long stretch of working overtime and dealing with a personal loss, I felt like I deserved a little peace. That's when I decided to take a trip to the local Christmas tree farm. It wasn't the biggest farm in town, far from it, but it was the one that always had a nostalgic charm. Rows of tall, perfectly shaped pines lined up like soldiers, ready to be taken home and decorated with twinkling lights. I had a small cabin on the outskirts of town, and I thought picking out my tree would be the perfect way to get into the holiday spirit. The farm was owned by an elderly couple, the Hansons, who had been running it for decades. They were well known in the area, and their farm had always been a symbol of warmth and tradition. Every year they would invite families to come, choose their tree, and enjoy the holiday atmosphere. Hot chocolate was always served, and there were carolers that would show up on occasion. It was small-town Christmas at its finest. But this year, something felt different. I arrived at the farm just after sunset. The sky was darkening quickly, and the flickering lights from the farm's entrance seemed to cast strange shadows across the snow. As I parked my car and stepped out, the sound of crunching snow underfoot was the only noise I could hear. I walked toward the barn-like building at the center of the farm, where I knew I'd find the Hansons. But as I approached, I noticed something odd. There were no cars in the lot, no families wandering around, no sounds of laughter or music. It was eerily quiet for a place that usually buzzed with life during the holiday season. The barn door was slightly open, and I called out, "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Hanson?" But there was no answer. I stepped inside, and the warmth of the place hit me immediately, almost too warm. The interior was exactly as I remembered. A crackling fireplace in the corner, a wooden counter with baskets of candy canes and ornaments, and an old-fashioned cash register. But something was off. There was a faint smell in the air, something sour, like old wood or something decaying. It lingered, and I couldn't shake it. I stood there for a moment, trying to get my bearings, but the unease settled in the pit of my stomach. I called out again, "Mr. Hanson? Mrs. Hanson?" Still no reply. I stepped deeper into the barn, wondering if maybe they had gone inside the house. But as I wandered around, my eyes caught a strange detail. There, sitting in the corner, was a Christmas tree. It was tall, its branches full and healthy, but something was off. The tree was decorated, but it didn't have the usual festive ornaments or lights. Instead, the decorations were more rustic, homemade. In fact, they looked almost like crude carvings. Some of them resembled twisted, gnarled faces, distorted, grotesque images that seemed to stare at me as I looked closer. Shivers ran down my spine. I turned around, hoping to find the Hansons, but that's when I noticed something even more unsettling. The room, which I had once thought to be empty, was filled with shadows. Tall, dark shapes that seemed to be watching me from the corners. They were just out of reach of the dim light, but their presence was undeniable. I reached for my phone to call the Hansons, but as soon as I did, I heard the unmistakable sound of the barn door closing. Slowly, the latch clicking shut. I turned, panic bubbling in my chest. "Hello?" I said, trying to steady my voice. And then I heard it. A voice, faint, almost like a whisper. It came from the back of the barn, where the shadows were the darkest. "Leave now." I froze. The whisper came again, this time louder. "Leave now." My heart pounded in my chest. I quickly shoved my phone into my pocket and made my way toward the door. But as I reached for the handle, it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. I pounded on the door, calling for help, but there was no answer. Panic surged through me as I turned around, my mind racing. My eyes darted back to the tree. I couldn't stop myself from staring at it, the twisted faces carved into the bark, their hollow eyes seeming to follow me. I could almost hear them whispering now, their voices mixing with the wind outside. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far corner of the barn, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. My heart leapt into my throat. Something or someone was moving toward me, slowly, deliberately. I spun around, trying to make sense of the movement in the shadows, but all I saw was darkness. Then, through the shadows, a figure emerged. It was Miss Hanson, or at least it looked like her. She was wearing her usual red scarf, but her face, it wasn't right. Her eyes were wide, almost bulging, and her skin looked sickly, pale, like it hadn't seen the sun in years. "Get out," she rasped, her voice hoarse and deep, like it had been dragged through the dirt. "You shouldn't be here." The door rattled behind me again, and I turned to find Mr. Hanson standing there, his face just as twisted as hers. His hands were clutching a long, rusty knife. "Leave now," he repeated, his voice cold and detached. It was then that I realized I wasn't just in a Christmas tree farm. I was in the midst of something far darker. I ran. I don't know how I managed to escape, but I did. I broke through a side window and stumbled out into the snow, my breath freezing in the air. I ran through the snow-covered fields, not stopping until I reached the road. I don't know how long I kept running, but I didn't look back. The next day, I went back to the farm with the police, but the Hansons were gone. The farm was completely abandoned. The barn was still there, but the trees were gone. The ornaments had been taken down, and the strange Christmas tree was nowhere to be found. The authorities didn't find any trace of the Hansons, no sign of where they had gone. And even though the farm was now empty, I couldn't shake the feeling that something dark still lingered there. To this day, I don't know what happened at that farm, but I can't help but think that there's something hidden there, something that wasn't meant to be uncovered. I never went back, and I don't plan to. And every Christmas, when I hear the sound of wind blowing through the trees, I wonder if the Hansons are still out there waiting for someone else to. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-tingling true horror stories. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't just the ones we see, but the ones we don't.